Hey, this is Dr. Eric Woodard, and I want to take the next 11 minutes to talk to you about let me think about it. Whenever we say, let me think about it, there's a few things happening. One, it may seem like we want to think about it because we need more information or we want to analyze the situation more. It can also be that if we need more information and we want to do more analysis, that more time will be helpful in helping us make a better decision. Or it could be that we want to think about it because we think asking others will help us make a better decision. And, look, if we're wanting to make an airplane fly or cure a disease or run some kind of experiment, like more information, more analysis, more data, that's our friend. Like, yay, science. However, unless you're possibly wearing a white lab coat or you're dealing with hypotheses and experiments and replication and controls, and you're worried about publishing what you find in a journal article someplace that's peer reviewed, most of the decisions we make aren't so objective and empirical as maybe we like to think they are. And yet this is how we act. How often do you hear people walking around saying, an organization saying, well, we make data-driven decisions? And I would just like to lovingly say, that's bullshit. And here's why. Let me start by asking you a question. What percent of human decision-making do you think is emotional, and what percent is logical? So what percent is emotional and what's logical when it comes to human decision making? Is it 50-50? Is it 70% emotional and 30% logical? Is it 90-10? Is it 90% emotional and 10% logical? All of those answers are wrong, by the way, because the correct answer is it's 100% emotional. Human decision making starts in the limbic system, where we have emotions. And one of the reasons we know this is because, like, back in the 1800s, when some poor guy got like a railroad spike stuck through his head and the limbic system was destroyed, the capacity for emotion was destroyed, people are fine, except they can't make a single decision. They don't know which sock to put on first or which piece of food to eat. And that's the debilitating part. And so it turns out that human decision-making is 100% emotional. And we make those decisions very quickly, crazy quickly. And data, information really just comes in after the fact to help us rationalize those decisions that we've originally made in a split second, and it was all emotional. Now, the part that makes this sort of limiting for humans when we say we need more data, well, human perception and our ability to even take in data is really subjective in the first place, and it's based on need. And so right now, if I was to ask you to look around the room you're in, okay, so look around. Now I want you to look around and look for red. Okay, look for the color red. So those two things that you just did, those experiences and the data you received from looking around were very different just because I said the word red. That's how subjective human information gathering and processing is. It's a rough estimate, but we are able to process about 40 bits of information a second through our conscious mind. Do you know how much we can process through our unconscious mind? 20 million bits. So it's orders of magnitude faster. And so the fact for us to assume that our thoughts really have any sort of meaningful impact on our decision making is pretty crazy. And just so you notice, I actually gave you data just now with the 40 bits and the 20 million bits. That was data. How convincing was that to you? Probably not, because you'd already made the decision, probably before you even started listening to this or watching this. That's how human decision making works, and it's affected by our language. If I was to say the word notebook, some of you are thinking of pieces of paper that are bound together by like a spiral wire. Some are thinking like something that looks more like what might be called a notepad. Some are thinking of like what might look like a journal that's sort of hardbound. And yet others of you are thinking of something that might be described as a 3-ring binder. So our human ability to gather information and much less think about it, yeah, it's kind of not a thing. And when it comes to asking for more time to think about it, again, you've already made the decision. And it's very likely that if you're a human, which if you're listening to this, I presume you are, right? That you're caught between two voices, a voice of power and a voice of safety. On one hand, there's a voice of power, and it's a voice of courage and optimism and possibility and action. It's a voice telling you to reach higher, that you can take up space, that you can be authentic, and that you can get outside your comfort zone, and that what others think of you is none of your business, and that you're more committed to serving than looking good, and that it's possible for you to get different results than the results you've been getting by taking actions that are different than the actions you've been taking. The voice of that elephant rider, however, doesn't have a lot of stamina. It's a strong voice, and it gets weak super fast. And given enough time, it'll get tired and slip away. On the other hand, there's a voice of safety. And it's a voice that tells us to avoid risks at all costs. It wants us to avoid displeasing others, definitely does not want us to get judged or do anything that might possibly result in change, because change is scary. Good or bad, change is scary to this voice. And so even when we know what we want, we know, like, we've made that split decision right at the beginning, unconscious, we have a sense of what we want, the voice of safety tends to say things like, well, you can't afford it, or that won't work for you, or you're not worthy of that, or your spouse is going to get mad at you, or the timing isn't right, or this isn't really a priority, or this isn't safe, or I don't trust that person, right? And this voice can go the distance. It's been keeping humans alive and safe from tigers and bears and scary things for about 200,000 years. This voice doesn't get tired. And the voice of safety knows that if it can just buy enough time, it'll win, so that we can go back into the cave and put the rock in front where we'll be safe and nothing will change. Nothing will happen. We'll be alive and we won't be meeting our full potential, not even close to it. Because inaction is much more forgivable than action. So if we just don't do anything, there's less chance that we're going to be judged. And by the way, if we abdicate the decision and ask a lot of other people, then we can spread the blame if it goes sideways. If we can prevent making a decision by, quote, thinking about it, it'll just drift away. And eventually we just kind of won't have to think about it, and we can just kind of lull back in to the thing we've been doing. Even though we had that original voice, that voice of power was saying, hey, we can do more. That voice will have gotten tired and gone away because too much time will have passed. Because thinking can feel like action. It's a placebo. And if it feels like action, it must be right. But the cost of that is that voice of power is just going to get tired, and it's going to go away. You may have heard stuff called like the half-life of enthusiasm, or those who think about it miss opportunities, and time kills all deals. And it's true. Time equals let's just keep doing what we've been doing. And that's why, quote, thinking about it is not really accurate. It's not like you're not really thinking about it. What you're really just doing is delaying. And delaying is the junk drawer of decision making. You know, the word decision is an interesting one. It actually comes from the Latin to cut, right? That's the root cause. And you might be familiar with the Greek legend of Alexander the Great. He was going around the ancient world, and he ran into Gordius, who was the king of Phrygia. And on the ox cart of Gordius was this big knot. And there was an oracle that had said, whoever's able to untie this Gordian knot would rule all of Asia. And so they brought Alexander the Great, and they said, okay, Alex, let's see how great you really are. Let's see if you can untie this knot. A lot of other people have tried. They couldn't untie it. Let's see if you can untie this knot. And so Alexander, according to legend, looked at it, looked at his sword, drew a sword, and just cut it in half. And he's like, done. Right? And everybody was like, oh, damn, right? So, well, very often it can be tempting to think we have to go from A to B to C to D to E, when really, instead of just thinking about it, we can just go A to Z and we can cut to the end. Because instead of running through the thought filters of, is it reasonable? Is it logical? What should I do? Do I need more data? The opportunity for us is to run through the filters of what would feel exciting? What would feel new? What would be helpful? What do I really want to do here? Because realize you actually already decided. And the only question is, are you willing to admit it? And are you willing to act on it? Do you find that you miss out on a lot of opportunities because you think about them too much and then they go away? If that's happening to you, let's get that handled. Email me at hello@woodardweb.com. That's hello@woodardweb.com. Let's set up a time to talk and figure that out for you.